And this is real familiar. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These are the things that are our measuring tools to let us know whether or not the Spirit is controlling us. Now, before we jump in, and we're gonna break these down and look at each of them this morning, but before we jump in and do that, I want to point out two just interesting things that we find in this passage that help us to understand it a little bit better. First of all, I'm going to make that three things. First of all, we have to understand this list in contrast to the list that precedes it. Okay, if you look back to verse 19, you see another list. And this is a different kind of list, not good things, but bad things. And it says the acts of the sinful nature are obvious, and then it lists the acts of the sinful nature. These two lists are in contrast against each other. Now, I would love to take the time to walk through the lists and play them off of each other, and so you can see how they play off of each other, but that would be about 6 sermons, so we're not going to do that. I'm just going to stick with the fruit of the Spirit this morning and tell you, you can go back and you can figure it out, and you can do the contrast on your own and figure that out. Second thing I want you to notice, verse 19, the bad list, it says these are the acts, the actions of the sinful nature. That's different than what verse 21 says, because 22 says the fruit of the Spirit. And here's the difference. The sinful nature, those are the things we do. Okay, that bad list, these are all things that you do. They're actions. You are responsible for them. But if you look at verse 22, it says the fruit of the Spirit is, this is not your actions. This is not telling you to do these things. This is something that is done in you that is harvested out of you. Harvest would be a great word here. The harvest of the Spirit is. Remember, it's like the farmer who plants his seeds and waters the seeds, and he cultivates the ground, and he does something with the weeds. He does all this, but ultimately the farmer doesn't make the seed grow. The farmer can't reach down into the ground and pull it up. And in the same way, we cultivate ourselves, we plant seeds, we open ourselves to the Spirit, we open ourselves to the Bible, we open ourselves to each other, and as a result, something grows up inside of us, and that is the fruit of the Spirit. There's a difference between doing and being. These, the fruit of the Spirit, are a reflection of who we are. Here's the third thing. This is important. You got to jump back to verse 16, because understand there is a command in this passage. But the command in this passage is not the fruit of the Spirit. The command in this passage was way back in verse 16 when Paul writes, "So I say, live by the Spirit." That's the command. What we are to do, our action, and so when we're all done here today, the action for you is this: live by the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is the result of obeying that action. If we will live by the Spirit, if we will open ourselves to the Spirit, the result of that will be a life that demonstrates all of these fruits: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. These are the results of opening ourselves to the Spirit. So let's dive in. Let's talk about what it means to open ourselves to the Spirit. And what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate our spiritual tank. All right? We're going to evaluate ourselves and say, all right, am I running on full? Am I full of the Spirit? Or am I running on half full? Or am I running on empty? As we look at this list of results of a Spirit-filled life, I want to break it into 4 categories for us. And you can see, if you contrast it to the other list, how that list is broken into the same 4 categories. The first category is this. It's our view of others. Okay, a Spirit-filled life will result in me having a right view of others. Love. What is love? There's a lot of ways we could define it. The Beatles said it's all we need. And in a way, they were right. Philippians 2:3. Paul says that we should have the same mind as Jesus, and he says, every one of you should in humility consider others better than yourselves. I think when we think about love, what we really need to think about is this idea that love is me thinking first of you before I think of myself. This is a hard thing to do in our world. We live in a very consumer-driven world where we are the consumers. A lot of us are going to go out to eat today, and you're going to go to a restaurant, and some of you will go to a restaurant where you have a waiter or a waitress, and they're going to come out and they're going to take your order. And it's their job to make you comfortable, to make you happy, to give you a good dining experience. They're kind of the go-between between you and the cook. I mean, everybody in that restaurant is focused on making you happy for two reasons. Number one, they want you to come back. They want more of your money. Number two, that waitress or waiter, they want a tip. And how much you tip them is dependent on how well they meet your needs, how well they take care of you. Now, let me take a time out for a second, okay? Because I got to say this. I work with our college kids. I lead a life group on Tuesday nights with them. And several of them are wait staff. And one of the things that they talk about is, some of them work over at Bob Evans. And the fortunate thing is they're not talking about our church because we don't have a Sunday night service. But they say that at Bob Evans, at least this one over here, the absolute worst shift to work the whole week, and people hate to work this shift, is Sunday night. Because that's when the church crowd comes. And they're the worst tippers, and they're the worst customers. And I'm glad that's not our church, because I know that we all are the best tippers and the best customers, because at the end of our meal, we're going to tell our waiters and waitresses where we go to church and invite them to come. So we want to make sure that we give good tips and we're wonderful customers. All right, time in. In our consumer culture, everywhere we go, people are trying to make us happy. And we want people to make us happy. This past summer, we went to Cedar Point as a family. And there was a horrible accident. Not like physical, gory kind of horrible. Like no roller coasters went shooting off the tracks. It was almost worse. They had a new ride there called the Maverick. And on the little park map, it said that you have to be 48 inches tall to ride the Maverick, which is great because all of my children are over 48 inches tall. So we went and we waited in line, and the line was really long because it's the new ride. And we waited for an hour just to get to the place where you start waiting in line. And that's the place where it says you have to be 54 inches to ride this ride. And Liam is just under 54 inches. So they measured and said, sorry, you can't ride this ride. I said, well, the map says you have to be 48 inches. And it didn't take long. Liam's in tears because he's been expecting this forever, and he's in tears. And the guy who's worked there is just a jerk to me. Sorry, can't do it. I'm like, I understand there's nothing that you can do about this. Who can I go and talk to? Because you guys ought to do something for my little boy. Well, you can go to this place. So I go to this place, and I say, hey, look. And he's crying the whole way, sobbing, screaming. And what do I do? I feel my heart is broken for him. He was deceived, but it's not acceptable for him to do that. So I'm kind of holding him and carrying him. Come on, Liam, just settle down. We're gonna work. So we go to the management, and I say, hey, look, here's the deal. Your map says 48 inches. I understand he can't ride the ride. We're not asking for him to ride the ride. But look, he's a mess, and it's your fault. What can you do for him? Sorry, nothing we can do. Can you apologize? Can you just maybe apologize to him? Well, we're sorry. I said, no, not to me, to him. No, we can't do that. You can't do that. So we left, and I went and bought him some cotton candy, and we went and rode some other rides. And at the end of the day, we went to the real big management, and we said, hey, look, we're not looking for anything at this point. You need to know that you've got some really bad customer service going on. They apologized. She came around the counter, got right down with Liam. I am really sorry. Gave him some little you're in the club thing and some tokens to go do something. That was great. But you know what? We expect, when we're at a place like Cedar Point, because we're dumping out a lot of money, we expect to be treated in a certain way. And in our society, there's this really high value on customer service. And so we expect good customer service. And when we don't get good customer service, it's kind of surprising and it makes for a good story. Unfortunately, sometimes that part of our culture, which isn't all bad, but that part of our culture carries over, and we make some assumptions in our mind that are wrong because we start to look at people, and the value of people as we see them is dependent on what they can contribute to us.